Welcome to the Perimenopause Athletes and Beyond Masterclass series. We are hearing from experts on female physiology, nutrition, training, recovery, and breathing, so you can be in your best health and perform in life and in sport. And today we are joined by Tyler Huston, which is super exciting because there's a movement going on, and who knew that it was about breathing? In any case, let me tell you a little bit about Tyler before I turn it over. Tyler is a respiratory specialist. He's a nurse. He's an EMR, which you're going to have to define for us, Tyler, high performance coach and founder of Breath Control Training. He has spent years upon years as a professional breathing coach with recreational and high performance athletes, professional sport teams, provincial, that's state, and national sport organizations, military and special force units, as well as paramilitary first responders. So his breadth and being able to be here with us is just so exciting. He has come and founded the Breath Control Training Program. And what that is it consists of breathing exercises and techniques specifically for athletes, which is cool. And it's scientifically proven to enhance the physical and mental sports performance. It reduces the risk of injury, expedites recovery, and improves overall well-being. Welcome. Like, how cool is this that we have you and that you are, coming to us, because I do think it's a movement. Breathing, who thought? So first of all, hi.
Hi, Tennille. Thank you so much for that warm welcome.
I'll let you say something. I really do mean this, is like, why in the world are we even having this conversation? Because we all breathe. We think we breathe. I think I breathe fine, except for when I'm not breathing. And then I, kickstart it pretty quickly. And don't we all kind of get this? And I want to know why this is so important and why I found you and wanted to bring and give you this place and space to get your word out.
Well, we've all made it this far, right? Breathing the way we have, we're still here, and I think that's a perceived angle on it, is that we've been breathing our whole lives. It's fine. We're still doing what we're doing. What can go wrong? And that's really what we kind of back things up, and we really focus on, is we restore your breath, because unfortunately, we live in a society here in North America of dysfunctional breathing habits. And it's all around us. And there's so many medical conditions that are stemming from starting at the foundation, which is our breathing. We breathe 30,000 times in a day. Okay, that's on average, 30,000 times. And out of those 30,000 breaths, we're maybe taking advantage of maybe 60% of that. Okay, so, and let's frame that up and why we should be talking about our breathing. Mm-hmm. Breathing is our body's number one energy supply, right? I'm here to advocate even more important than nutrition and hydration, because we need to be breathing every minute of every day to really take advantage of that energy on a cellular level, to be able to heal, to be able to perform, and just to maintain, to be happy, to have energy, to get out of bed in the morning, to do what we need to do. And right now, through these dysfunctional breathing patterns that we've developed since we were young and since we started going to school, and sitting for too long with poor posture in school is where a lot of this really begins. We're really developing these poor patterns, and they can come from school. They can come from maybe overnight, a vehicle accident that impairs our breathing. It could come from long-term chronic stress, anxiety, all of the above. And unfortunately, what we're doing right now, screen time, right? That's a huge part of things, is when we're spending time on screens, if it's looking at each other on the computer screen, or if it's scrolling through our cell phones, what we're doing for the most part is we're up here, right? Yeah. We're in pure stalking mode. But let me just frame that like we're in pure sympathetic fight or flight. We're like a tiger in the tall grass ready to pounce. So we're up here and we're barely breathing at all while we're connected to these screens. So these are all of the above.
Yeah. When you say that, you mean like our breath only goes to here, like we are not fully belly breathing. Is that what you're alluding to? Right. Okay. Like
100%. Yeah.
not getting that diaphragm
We're not
thing.
That's it. That's exactly it. And these are all the reasons why that out of those 30,000 breaths, we're maybe taking advantage of maybe that 60% every day. So just think about that for a moment, go over that. Every single morning, we're getting out of bed, we're waking up, and we're throwing nearly half of our body's main energy supply directly down the drain.
Can you, like, that's kind of profound. Yeah. So one of my questions immediately is like, you talk about energy supply and, you know, coming from a nutrition background, I never thought before about breath as energy. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that so I can understand it?
Absolutely. What I mean by that is on the cellular level, our mitochondria and our cells, every single one of them, to be able to perform any movement, any activity, needs the energy supplied by the oxygen. That's what's bringing down. So that's what I mean. That's why I put it right up there and as I say that, I've got my green smoothie on one side and my giant water glass on one side. So of course, it all matters together. It means that you can't stop. If you start breathing properly, you can't start eating at fast food 5 times a day. That's not how it works. It just ties in the whole package.
Right. So coming back now to, because now I wanted to really understand that energy supply piece. So now that we understand how it's feeding, and you had mentioned it at every single cell of our bodies is requiring it. That's phenomenal. Tell us a little bit more, and then you let us understand how it's impacting and doing dysfunction, and that we're only breathing up to here. So tell us a little bit more about that dysfunction as it come into athlete, and what does it look like, and what are we talking there?
Sure. So what I mentioned, that we're barely taking advantage of this supply that we need. And the bad news again, that as we age, as we approach, it's not going to get any easier. Actually, every single year, starting at our 30s, we're going to drop 5 to 9% of our aerobic capacity we begin to lose. So we're not starting at an optimal point to begin with, and we're going to lose as we age, as we get older.
Yeah.
So it's so much more important to get into it right away. But what we need to do is really focus on engaging our diaphragm. And I know we've all heard this before, but the reason is that if we're engaging our diaphragm using our nose, nasally breathing, that's how we really allow the most optimal level of delivery of oxygen to our cells, but also absorption of oxygen to our cells. Okay. And as we talked about being up here, and being up here is directly associated a lot of times with mouth breathing. Okay. And that's one of my biggest things, is that number one rule for breath control training is inhale and exhale through the nose always, as much as absolutely possible.
Okay. You just said something. Inhale and exhale. Like, I'm like, okay, all about the, like, in our everything, it's like inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. But telling me that I'm totally wrong.
There's so many. I mean, we were designed as human beings to breathe with our nose. Our nose performs 30 plus functions that our mouth just simply does not. Okay. And one of those functions is why it's so important during the exhale is the first part is it adds resistance. So it creates that natural, slower, longer exhale, which leads towards the rest and digest and the parasympathetic. That's kind of the first part. And the second part, and why it's so important for anyone with any kind of seasonal allergies, anyone with exercise-induced asthma or regular asthma. When we breathe through our nose and exhale through our mouth, we're robbing the moisture out of our nasal cavity and we're not delivering it back. So when we do that, that's what begins to cause, first off, it dries out and cause cracking. And once we get cracking, and then we get inflammation. And this is the beginning of asthma. This is the beginning of bronchoconstriction, because what starts at the top begins to follow all the way down. So that's why it is so important. And well, I'm sure throughout this interview, we're going to go through another 30 reasons why nasal breathing is the way to go. But right off the bat, that is the main reason for the exhale is so important, especially for endurance athletes, right? Especially for anyone who is prone to exercise-induced asthma, which is up to 50% of athletes. It's pretty staggering, the number of people that struggle with it.
Yeah. Well, I know I struggled with it. I had no idea that I had a problem. And then I moved down to Austin, Texas, and I hardly could breathe. And I don't know what it was, but it just kept on getting worse and worse. And yeah, so I'm one of those 50%. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners here could know of somebody, if it's not themselves, that have had this difficulty. Okay. I have so many questions. I don't even know where to go right now. So actually, I'm gonna also, how did you come to this? Because I want to hold that place where we just were at with the athletes, and don't worry, everybody, we're going to come back to like the inhaling and exhaling out of the nose. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to come back to that. But tell us how you came to this, like, breathing thing, because you're a nurse, like you have this huge, like, accolades of other stuff you were doing.
Well, it started off, and I'll back it up a little bit, but I'll kind of tell you my background here. I grew up in Manitoba, in the prairies, middle of Canada, right above North Dakota. And then I moved to Arizona to play hockey for a few years. And after that, I've now found my way out here to Vancouver Island, to the ocean. And you couldn't bribe me and pay me enough to move away from it now. But it's that I fell in love with the ocean immediately. So I fell in love with surfing, and I fell in love with free diving. So free diving, some people think it's when you jump out of a plane with those wingsuits on. That is not what it is. Free diving is when you enter the water, and unlike scuba, where you have all your tanks that you take down with you, free diving is you spend as much time underwater in the underwater environment on your own terms. So it's on one breath of air. And then that's when you get to enjoy. And that was my self-care. That was my meditation underwater. And then I started getting into it and started realizing the changes that were happening in myself, not as well as like performance in other sports, but also as far as conversations I was having with my wife. All right. The extra patience that was added when I was talking with my kids. It was just my skin was getting brighter, my eyes were getting whiter, just the awareness that it creates. And what I always say with breath control training is that it really, the more you develop your breath work, it gives you the ability to respond intelligently rather than react emotionally. And that's because it really connects your breath with your body, with your nervous system, and so on. And I think we're going to talk more about that as we go along, but that's what got me into it. And initially, as soon as I felt that, I just went full steam forward. This is my new career. This is what we're dedicating our lives to. I started introducing it at a few of the treatment centers that I work at. I actually had a soldier one day in my office, and he was looking for, he was having an anxiety attack. He was having high panic, and he came down for an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. So of course, being a nurse, I put it in the cup and administered it, but I asked him if he would give me 10 minutes first. Just give me 10 minutes and let's do some breathing together.
Yeah.
And after that 10 minutes, that calm comes over you. And when you begin to lead with the breath, everything begins to follow behind. And then he turned around and went away and left me that pill on the table. And that process just repeated itself and repeated itself. And now I've been doing this for 4 years, 3 years now in treatment centers all across North America. And this has been just an amazing endeavor. And this is what I get to do every day, is work with people. Wow. And non-pharmacologically, that's what I always bold and underline whenever I'm talking or whenever I put it in print, non-pharmacologically connect that breath with the body. And that's for not only physical performance, what we're talking about, but also mental composure and so on. It really just builds that resilience at every point of the body.
Wow. That's really powerful, because when we think of, women in perimenopause and, in this time in our life stage, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in our family life, in our careers, in not wanting to let go of these sport goals and dreams that we have and stay healthful. And then this desire to continue being healthful well until we're old. And so you just start piling and piling and piling and piling. And when we have this massive amount of stress, like, how do we do it all? How do we hold it all? And where breath is, if I'm understanding you correctly, breath is where we actually let it go and breathe and find that space to actually release. And therein lies, Viktor Frankl, therein lies the freedom, right? And between the stimulus, stress, and response is the freedom. And that's where, if we understand breath, that we understand how to really tap into it, like that amazing story of that soldier, then that's where we can keep and find our strength.
That's right. And the beautiful and the powerful part about it is that we don't have to figure out all the life's problems at once. We don't have to rationalize. We don't have to intellectualize to figure out how to overcome this problem. And that's what we all do. That's wired into our systems.
Yeah.
But when we start with the foundation, when we begin with leading with the breath through functional breathing techniques, the body has no choice but to follow behind. And that's through even respiratory sinus arrhythmia. As we learn to control that breath, we can bring down our pulse. And when we do that, the mind will follow right behind that. And that's where the emotional regulation comes in. And that's where that ability to respond rather than react comes in. You don't need to have it solved. You don't need to figure it out. Just breathe.
That's so cool. Okay. So now we're all breathing. Like, let's just pretend get this, you guys. Tyler's giving everybody a free respiratory assessment and consultation. So you just have to go onto his website. I know I'm supposed to save that till later, but don't worry. You will have access to a way that we can begin this journey. So that's okay. In any case, so now because we've just done Tyler's thing, now we've come back and we're breathing. Help me understand, as athletes, how in the world I'm not going to breathe out through my mouth, because okay. That seems like a tall order there, Tyler. Let me tell you.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But when we go through, and that's what I mean. Yoga and breathing, and this has all been around for thousands and thousands of years. But through the breath control training program, and I incorporate pieces of Oxygen Advantage, which is founded by Patrick McKeown. Brilliant. He's an author of The Breathing Cure, is his new book. And he's the founder of the Oxygen Advantage. So his real belief is less is so much more. Okay. And that's what, as athletes, that's part of the science that really helps explain how switching to nasal breathing is so much superior. And why it's hard, though, is because it's absolutely opposite than anything we've ever been taught as athletes from any coach. Absolutely opposite. Okay. And just in a nutshell, and I would love to spend an hour and a half all day talking about this, and I've got slides for days, so we could go over this and go all over the benefits. Yeah. But just focus on that less is so much more. The more oxygen that we have in our body, right? That's how we've always been taught. Okay, you're ready to go, big breath and go for it. Big breath and go. the more oxygen that we pull in our body at any given moment, the tighter that oxygen is bound to our hemoglobin, the tighter it's bound to our red blood cells, which means it is locked. It cannot be used by the body. It will circulate through our vessels and never be absorbed by our body. And this happens with the slightest amount of hyperventilation. And hyperventilation is anything bigger than a normal size breath. So it doesn't mean hyperventilation is just anything larger than a normal size breath. So the more oxygen we have, the tighter that bind is. The more we slow our breath down, the more we rely on all the biochemistry that happens as we breathe through our nose. We actually build our tolerance to carbon dioxide in our body. And as our carbon dioxide levels go up in our body, the pH in our body comes down. And here we have, this is called the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. But what happens is when the pH comes down, that hemoglobin opens up and releases every molecule of oxygen. So breathing light, breathing deeply will actually deliver way more oxygen to your body than huffing and puffing through your mouth will. And I'll have athletes, I'll have hockey players or runners right at the middle. I'll have them actually slow it down and almost perform breath holding techniques where you almost, I promise you that it doesn't feel ideal when you start. You can well attest to this. But as you slow it down and as you understand the science behind it, you know that urge to breathe is not caused by a lack of oxygen, but instead signals saying that you have too much carbon dioxide, which are false signals. Those signals come from a lifetime of dysfunctional breathing patterns. So that's what we do. We really focus on your carbon dioxide tolerance and your sensitivity to carbon dioxide. The more your blood, your body's able to tolerate the carbon dioxide, the more it can deliver and absorb into your cells.
Right. So can you tell me and maybe give me a little bit of like hope this can be learned?
100%.
Because I'm having a hard time imagining, and you know what, I'm going to totally start. I think I'm going to need some guidance. Actually, I know I'm going to need guidance on this. And I guess that's a point to make. Okay, I'm going to let you speak actually, but I want to know, how do you learn this? Because it seems like it's like you learn anything. I'm going to suck at it. That's what I'm going to do.
Well, it begins, and the first thing we begin, and through breath control training, ideally what we do is like a 6-week program that we take through. That's ideal. I always tell my clients that after the first session, you will feel better. You will feel after number 1, when we just begin to restore that breath and work on that functional breathing.
Yeah.
But no, that being said, it takes a full 90 days for you to feel the full benefits, the full impact of this program. Because what we actually do, if we're going to actually alter not only the composition of your blood in your body, but also the biochemistry and how it reacts in your body, and why the 90 days based on the life cycle of your red blood cells. So once you have that turnover of the brand new generation, yes, so that's when it really happens. But then my rule of thumb and how to start off, I say it takes about 7 to 8 runs, for example, okay? So your performance level is here. On your first switch to nasal breathing, you go backwards, of course, right? Because you're slowing it down, and that's okay. You want to restrict that breath, and you want to slowly change your body. We've been breathing the same way we've been breathing our entire lives. It does take a little turnaround. Yeah. But I say after about 7 or 8 times, we begin to get right back to where we started, right back to square one. And then after that, we slingshot forward.
And progress. So, okay. Yes. Well, I think that's really, like, for me, you can tell it's like I'm so learning in this. I love it. It is a really, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to actually really, because after 7 days, like, that's just starting a new, like, we haven't even started a habit at 7 days. Like, we have got a long ways to go to forming it as a way of operating.
Yes.
But I like it that you can actually see a bit of a timeline. I'm just like, because I'm a bit of a goal-oriented individual. So like 90 days, okay, can I do this for 90 days? I can do this for 90 days.
Yes.
And actually really come into a different space. And that's pretty powerful.
And, people like yourself, goal-oriented individuals, every ounce that you put into your breathing, into the breath control training, you get 2 out of it. And that's how quickly it begins to happen as soon as you start. And it is really a matter of front end loading. And what I do when I'm working with clients, I give them little stickers with a B on it for breathe. And I tell them, put it on your cell phone, put it on the steering wheel of your car, put it on your computer, putting on by your light switches. And every time you see it, it's going to remind you to breathe into your functional breathing patterns. And it only takes a couple of weeks of putting that front end loading into it before muscle memory will begin to take over. And you're doing it at moments of rest, during moments of physical activity. And then after just a few weeks, it'll begin to take over through your sleep. Right. Which is another big point of how dramatically it can improve your sleeping quality only after a short amount of time.
Right. And you had mentioned already that, we're not going to have time to go over all the dysfunctions, but I do know, because I read the breath book, and it's like sleep apnea, snoring, if you have problems, like we talk as perimenopausal women, like we talk about how much difficulty we have sleeping. Well, this would just be another layer to that of trying to come into a better sleep health. And gosh, I didn't even think about that until just now, because of course I'm talking to a breath expert, which is brilliant. All right, so we're going to run out of time. I already know that. Can you quickly describe your B3? Because I like these little like acronyms, and you've got a B3 thing going on. So tell me about that.
You bet. So that's B cubed equals ROC. That's very easy to remember once you just frame it like that. B3 equals ROC.
Yeah.
And what that means is, I already kind of mentioned it, but we lead in life, in every situation in life, okay? Before every conversation, before every movement, because functional breathing is equivalent and will equal functional movements. We lead with our breath in every aspect of our lives, and we lead with, it's all about the rolling wave breath, okay? Rhythmic, controlled breath. Ideally a 1 to 1.5 ratio where we have a slightly longer exhale. Yeah. But it's that rolling wave. We lead with that rolling wave, and then the second wave shows up right behind that. And that's our body, that's our pulse through respiratory sinus arrhythmia will follow our controlled slow breath. All right, it's tied to it. And then the third B is our brain, okay? It's our mind. It has no choice again. That's what will remove that neural excitability, and it'll help with that emotional regulation, and it just ties the whole system together. And then so when you can do those, that's your introduction, and that's you saying hello with your nervous system. Okay, when you have all three, that's what you're doing. You're interacting and you're creating that awareness to feel how your nervous system is, how it reacts to while you breathe, how your pulse changes. And then once you achieve that, you're going to be able to achieve the rock, I call it, and that's the relaxation on command. And that's a very powerful statement. Just imagine, there's not too many things that are going to be able to get in your way once you get to that point.
I'm just thinking for my athletes, thinking about, getting into the water. I'm a triathlon coach. And so getting into the water, being able to relax in the space of people, the chaos, and being able to get that. If you're on the bike, you're anxious because there's more people around you, and we can't function well if there's a lot of people, or you have that, you can't breathe. And then on the run, when we start to get fatigued, how you come into it. And what a powerful tool. Okay. You're right. We could talk for a long time on this, because I think that we're just really, and I'm going to have to do this again anyway. So I have some closing rapid fire questions. It's already that time. I know. So Are you ready?
I think so. Should I stretch out?
Yeah, you can stretch out. Okay. Right. We are athletes after all. Okay. Give us one moment of courage.
Of courage. Okay. I think that would have to be the first moment that I was handed my first son, when he was put in my
Yeah.
hand. At that moment, you have no idea, or I had no idea how am I going to be a dad? What's all going to happen here? So at that moment, just knowing that this was going to be okay and that this is going to be amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. To really stand up and into that. Wow.
yeah.
I hear you on that. Tell us one thing that you're grateful for right now.
Hmm. Right now, speaking with you,
Aw.
speaking about the breath with you, being able to do this as a living and every day get the reactions out of people that the way you're reacting and be able to truly help people from the foundation in so many different parts of their lives. I mean, I work with such a variety of different people and each one taking their own benefits for what they need to get from it. So I'm just so happy to be in the position and so grateful and lucky to be able to help people in that way.
It's wonderful to have to be in a place that we get to impact. It's so
Mhm.
special. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice that you have heard that you're going to have to tell yourself again and again as you age?
Okay. I mentioned Patrick McCowan earlier, and I'm going to use his advice, and that is shut your mouth.
Oh my goodness.
So that works on so many different levels.
That was so perfect. Oh my gosh.
Keep your mouth shut, and not only are you going to be able to absorb more from what's
Mm.
going on around you and create more perspective and awareness, but shut your mouth, breathe in and out through the nose, and that will affect every single system of your body, mentally and physically.
I am so going to have to live with that piece of advice that I've just gotten from you, Tyler, on so many levels because I just anyway, okay. All right. So let's you're giving, like I had mentioned in the middle of the interview, that you're giving our amazing listeners a free respiratory assessment and consultation. Can you just tell us a tiny little bit more about that and what they can expect when they click on your I want to do this?
100%. So yeah, it just breathcontrol.ca is the website, and begin breathing. You'll see the link, and that we can do it through Zoom, so I can actually assess you, and we're gonna have a look and just have a discussion and some Q&A about your specific sport or specific ailments that might be bothering you,
Mhm.
and then I'm also gonna do a screener exam with you to be able to tell your tolerance for CO2, which is going to be able to kind of estimate where your moment of breathlessness begins and your moment of maximum breathlessness will take you. So we'll go through all this and we'll just begin in that few minutes we're going to have together to actually take away and begin to restore that functional breathing and give you something that you could really use immediately and take directly with you for sport, or if there's any, like I say, any injury or ailment that's bothering you.
Yeah. And this is really for everyone, isn't it? Like it is something that every single person can do and can tap into and learn from.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of children, right, in schools. I do work with schools, but then all the way up, and like specifically for the age group we're working with and the women we're working with and who this is geared towards, so many aspects as far as delivering that efficiency through your breath for exercise, delivering that ability to engage and use that energy supply and actually take it with you to help healing, to recover faster, to improve your sleep, to even when you switch to your nose, and here's a good one, you switch to your nose, you immediately save 42% of moisture loss that you would exhale and you would lose through your mouth. 42% is a huge number as we through hot flashes and more sweating as we get older and hydration, we lose our sense of hydration, that we don't want to drink as much water. 42% more by immediately we save for endurance runners, that we hang on to that hydration to help with everything. I mean, I could just continue, but there's so many reasons why this is designed for everyone. And it all just starts with closing that mouth.
And I'm like trying to shut my mouth. Well, and people can find you on breathcontrol.ca. We've said that. I cannot thank you enough for
Yes.
joining us and sharing your wisdom with us. So thank you. And we are going to have to continue this conversation one day, Tyler. I can't.
Part 2.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Tennille.